Is Russia pushing to cut off Ukrainian units along a key highway? But does Ukraine have other plans? Plus, is Putin rolling out some of his most poorly equipped units? I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. Let's talk about all of it. Okay, so this is a really interesting story from the Kiev Independent saying that Russia is advancing towards a key highway in eastern Ukraine. Now, we know that the Donetsk Oblast has been the site of Putin's largest surge. This is part of his summer offensive that he's been planning for some time. And Ukrainian soldiers in Chasiv Yar are reporting that one of their key highways that they rely on for resupply, the T0504, is in danger of being cut off by Russian forces. Now, the reality, when we take a look at the map, well, here, let me show you guys on Google Maps. This is T504 here. So you can see it runs east-west through Bakhmut, through the north side of Ivanivsky, and south through Chasiv Yar. Right. So when we compare that to the control map, you can quickly see where the problems start to emerge. Right. For Ukrainian forces, this is one of their largest highways, right? Widest and most intact. So it means that a fairly high volume of aid or munition supplies can get into Chasiv Yar through this highway, right? They likely take this route here, turn left, and then get it into Chasiv Yar to distribute to the units in the fight, right? But you can see that Russian forces are actually fairly close to cutting off the highway, at least the points where it accesses Chasiv Yar, the Chasiv Yar proper, right? There's also supposedly, according to this report, another effort by Russian forces, to push into the highway along this kind of southern axis here and try to cut it off that way. But the fear is that the Russian offensive is likely trying to run the same basic playbook they ran in Bakhmut, in which they advance along the north and south flanks, reduce the ability of these defending troops to receive resupply, and then push into the center of the town itself. And this would track, again, with Russia's kind of piecemealing strategy. You can see as we work back over the course of several days, though, Russian forces have really struggled to make sizable advances, but they are able to do this kind of gradual creeping advance, right? As we move forward in time, you can see them trying to seize territory along this northern flank and a bit along this southern flank as well. But the real danger, again, is going to come if they're able to likely take like this intersection here and this intersection here. Again, it becomes pretty obvious when you look at the map like this that this highway is just so key to getting into Chasiv Yar and distributing additional aid to these units in contact, right? The alternatives, and they do discuss the alternatives in this article, it wouldn't be it wouldn't require Ukraine to withdraw from Chasiv Yar if it were to fall, but Ukraine would have to pivot to alternatives. And most of these alternatives just aren't that good. You can see, first off, this north-south road that runs by Kalinivka is not really going to cut it. You also have these two roadways here, but these, according to the soldiers interviewed in the article, are much smaller roadways. They simply can't handle the high volume of traffic required to equip a large defense. And more critically, it would further concentrate Ukrainian resupply onto two roads and eventually even potentially as little as one road. And that would create a situation in which Russian forces could simply monitor these two roadways and interdict the munitions and other resupply using artillery, HIMARS, FPV drones, etc. Not that, and you're like, well, couldn't they do that now? It's true, right? But the more roads you have, the more routes, the harder it is for Russian forces to monitor them all and interdict them all. So the further it concentrates, the harder it gets, right? And So in this instance, we're seeing something that's doing, I would estimate, probably 50% of Ukraine's total supply to Chasiv Yar units is in danger of being cut off, which will, again, make these two roads simply bigger, better targets. But Russia is pulling out all the stops to try to make this happen, including deploying some units to the front that may not be exactly ready for prime time. But if you want to make sure you're ready for your prime time, hopefully it's not a meat wave attack. But if it's hitting the gym, right? Staying focused when you hit those afternoon doldrums at work, you need a surge of caffeine. And that's why I created Strike Gum. Strike Gum has 90 milligrams of caffeine in every piece, right? It's made in the USA, veteran owned. And yeah, we pay a little bit more to have it manufactured in Denver, but that gives you the confidence that when I talk about the fact that this has natural caffeine in it, right? Not the weird lab-made encapsulated stuff. And it tastes great. It's a refreshing mint flavor. So your breath isn't going to smell like coffee or even worse, like an energy drink. So there's no downsides to Strike Gum. Each individual pack contains the equivalent of 5 energy drinks worth of caffeine, plus each piece has 100 milligrams of alpha GPC. So check it out. You can get it at strikegum.com, or you can just go to Amazon, right? Strikegum.com, though, is where you're going to get all the veteran discounts, the first responder discounts, the new customer discounts. But again, Amazon, you can just go in, search Strike Gum, and hit it with one click. Thank you, guys. Everybody that's left us a review. Again, it really helps tell people that Strike Gum isn't like the alternatives, right? It's not like the weird sort of caffeine gum that's just a caffeine wrapped in a dry, dehydrated pill made overseas. This is the real deal. So check us out. Anyway, here's what I thought was interesting. The Russian military command is throwing units into this effort in Donetsk, right? Including supposedly under-equipped units initially intended to act as an operational reserve. So that means that Russian forces are committing their reserves into combat. And Russia, right? So they're saying that as of July 13th, per Ukrainian military observer, Russian military command meant to form this 27th Motor Rifle Division as an operational reserve. And an operational reserve is a term for a unit that, as they point out, is brought into battle in Soviet doctrine. In Soviet doctrine, it's supposed to be to exploit a breakthrough. Right? Once you've kind of opened a breakthrough unit, or you're about to suffer a breakthrough, you commit your reserve to either stabilize the situation or exploit it, right? But the key is you need that reserve because of Soviet doctrine is so pressure heavy. And I'm saying Soviet doctrine because that's when it was written, but this is how Russian generals are still fighting. They're fighting with this constant pressure, right? Think of it like a dam, right? The water's always exerting pressure against the dam, but eventually somewhere in the dam, boom, a hole opens up. And here's the catch. You need to make sure there's water to pour through that hole. That's what the Soviet doctrine, and therefore Russian doctrine, operational reserve, does. They are meant to exploit the situation and actually widen the hole to allow even more forces to come through. It's essential to the Russian theory of victory, right? And it's exactly what happened in Oshchetina. You might remember there was an issue with Ukrainian forces rotating. There was, again, a hole in the line, and Russia was the reason they were able to exploit it is because they had these operational reserve units on standby that entered through and took what would have been a small breakthrough and made it a much larger problem. So the fact that the Russians don't have a breakthrough, right? There isn't a breakthrough happening in Avdiivka or in Toretsk. The fact that they are deploying these units, especially because, the 27th is actually staffed in part by the degraded remains of the 21st Motor Rifle Brigade and other sort of heavily degraded and under-equipped units. says that the Russian military command might actually be running out of troops. And this aligns with other things that we have heard, because we know that Russia took a phenomenal number of casualties, even by Russian standards, in May and June of this year, losing 70,000 troops killed or wounded over the course of 2 months. And that's a problem because in those same 2 months, even the high-end estimates say that Russia can mobilize about 25,000 troops a month, meaning that they had a 20,000 troop deficit in those 2 months alone. And so when you have that and you want to launch a big summer offensive, you've got to find those troops somewhere. So the answer is, it seems like they're taking what should be a reserve and they're throwing it into battle, right? Now, that has produced a lot of pressure on Ukrainian forces. The pressure is significant. But the key part is that for a major offensive breakthrough to occur for Russia, they need to not just be able to apply the pressure, they need to exploit it if they break Ukrainian lines. And right now, there's no exploitation force available, at least if this report is true. And the units that are in the fighting are so under-equipped, they're likely taking even greater casualties. So you see how that can escalate the cycle, right? As Ukrainian forces get more aid, they're becoming more combat effective. Russia, whose forces are even more poorly equipped, are going to become less effective, and they're going to incur more casualties, meaning that 20,000 gap, that 10,000 soldier a month gap, it might actually be getting wider, especially if Russia's recruitment efforts start to slow somewhat, which again, I'm not sure. I haven't seen evidence of that happening, but I think it's highly possible given that it doesn't appear that Russia is considering a general conscription, a general mobilization. And this is in contrast to Ukraine, which has ramped up its mobilization and conscription efforts. So, is it good news for Ukraine? Probably not in the short term, but in the medium and long term, it may just end up putting Putin behind the 8 ball, especially in terms of his ability to raise the next army that he's going to need to fight in Ukraine, because this one's not going to last much longer. Anyway, guys, if you want to support the channel and get access to uncensored combat footage, you want to become a member at combatvetnews.com. You guys know that the Colonel tier members get access to everything. They get access to the twice-a-week uncensored combat videos, Q&As, and the by-name shout-outs, right? So a huge thank you to Martin Baum, Gregory Pace, Stuart Abel, Daniel Brown, James Ola, Chris Holmes, and Chris Gorsuch. But if you want to support me as well, you can also become a lieutenant tier. Lieutenant tiers get the shout outs here, get access to the Q&As and the twice weekly uncensored combat footage. But even the specialist tier, guys, you get access to those videos, and it's the way to support the channel over on combatvetnews.com. Thank you guys so much. Link is in the description. See you in the next one. Cheers.